All right, here we go. Here we go with the special triangles. Hopefully you've got this done. There's my right angle. So this one, our 60-degree angle is, just shout it out, pi by 3. And our 30-degree angle is pi by 6. Very good. And then this one's pi by 2 if you want to write that down. And I've got 1, root 3, and 2. And this is my 1, 1, root 2. And there's my right angle, pi by 2. And each of these are 45, which is pi by 4. Good. Okay, let's try the first one. So we've got a different domain, negative pi to pi. We'll talk about what that means in a second because it does change how we have to think about our answer, but it doesn't change how we start the question. What do we do to start these kinds of questions? So we just did the last question that we just did from the previous day, you know, and I was saying how when it's cosine of -1, it's not a special triangle ratio, but this is, right? We recognize root 3 over 2 is in the triangles. So I figure out which triangle, and I figure out what the angle is that would give me that. And this is for sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Root 3 over 2, so I'm looking at pi by 3 here. So my related angle, which is always positive and acute, that might be something that some people have to continuously remind themselves of, because when the questions change a little bit, people start to make things up and like forget some of those little things. But the related angle is always, always, always positive and acute, right? It's like a first quadrant angle. It's not really even in a quadrant though. It's the angle that's made from the terminal arm, between the terminal arm and the x-axis. It's in all the quadrants, the related angle, right? It's not really, but you could think of it as in the first quadrant because it's always positive and always acute. But now what do I have to think of? How am I actually going to answer this question? Yeah?
You have to make a negative angle kind of going the opposite way.
Yeah, so here's my domain is doing this, is saying that if I'm starting here, this is 0 radians, negative pi would be half rotation that direction, and positive pi would be a half rotation that direction. So I've still got, like you could also have, sometimes we see this, the domain might look like this, 0 less than or equal to theta less than or equal to pi. So it's just the top two quadrants. And in that case, you might not have a solution, right? Some things wouldn't have an answer in those quadrants. If it was a negative and it was sine, you wouldn't have an answer there. So you could you can do all kinds of different things with the domain. But this one here that we're working with is, so that's not the one we're working with. This one here that we're working with is the full, all four quadrants, but two of them are going the way we're used to, and then the other two are actually going backwards. So where is sine positive here? Let's do cast. Or sorry, where is sine negative? In the bottom two. So quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So what angle would exist in my domain that would take me to quadrant 3? John, what do you think? Negative 2 pi by 3. Think about that. And I'm going to draw it out. If that's where I'm starting, then I go, this is negative pi by 3, and this is negative 2 pi by 3, because negative means rotating the other direction. Does that make sense? Everybody okay with that? This is something that some people do find tricky. So that is my related angle, and it's pi by 3, but this is the angle that got us there, and this is in the domain of negative pi to 0 to pi. Very good. So you can 2 pi by 3, negative 2 pi by 3, and then In quadrant 4,
Negative pi by 3.
good, negative pi by 3. Again, it seems strange to have negative angles like that, but that's just because we haven't really done it before. Another way you can think about it, you don't have to. Don't be confused by this. You know, sometimes we do a lot of like sidebar things so that you can make new connections to the different details in trigonometry or whatever you know the unit is, like whatever we're talking about. Some people, it confuses them, so you can probably ignore this. But also, when we're graphing, like we tend to graph from 0 to 2 pi, but there's no reason why I can't, and that's the angle, right? The x value is your angle. We don't think of it that way, but it's actually theta, the input, right? And so I can also go back to the negatives. Negative rotating the other way would be negative on the like x-axis, or you could call it theta. It'd be the same thing. So you've seen it in graphing. Okay, let's do another one. Tan theta is equal to 1. What do you think? Somebody help me out. John? How'd you get that? Very good. So when we saw the last question where cos theta equals -1, and we used the graph, but I said how for tan, if it was 1, you wouldn't. That's in the special triangles, right? So, and that just comes from experience. If you're confused about that or you don't know how to tell when you do one and when you do the other, that's part of just getting it. You have to know. So theta related is pi by 4. And if my domain is and we're going to do cast. Where is tan positive? It's positive in the first quadrant and the third quadrant. So one of my angles is going to be rotating positive, and the other one's going to be rotating negative, right? To get to the third quadrant, I've got to go back this way because of my domain. But to get to the first quadrant, I'm going that direction. So how would I go negative with a related angle pi by 4 to get to that one? What would that answer to that one be? For the third quadrant angle, what would it be? Nice. -3 pi by 4 and just pi by 4. Whoop. Okay. And cos theta equal to 1. How do I do this one? It's different from the last one. We kind of already saw it, except the last one was -1. Yeah, so we use a graph again. Why is it always cos when it's 1? I don't know. We never see sine. But it was -1 before. This time it's 1, so we're going to have a couple of answers. It's 1 here. Oh, wait a minute. Ooh, interesting. I didn't even think about that. -pi to pi. So I'm going to graph back the other way as well. That's nice, though. So where's -pi on this graph? It's here. Where's pi? It's here. So cosine will only be 1 in one place for this question when theta is 0. If it was to 2 pi, I'd have a second answer there. Or if it was like to -2 pi, I'd have a second answer there, right? But I don't. Any questions? Yes? No?